are live. Welcome to a special edition of the Mecca of Banter podcast. Today we have something a little bit special for you guys. We're going to be calling these the Mecca moments. As you guys know, we go over a lot of different topics on the normal podcast and the Mecca of Banter. And sometimes we just kind of do a little quick overview. We don't get to go in depth on a lot of our passionate sides or passion that we have towards certain clubs. And obviously, as you can tell by the guests that we have today, we are diving deep into both of our clubs, that both of our supported club, which is Chelsea. They had a very busy transfer window there, Mr. Jake Wynd. How are we
Yeah,
feeling over there? Time to clock in.
yeah, probably if not the busiest of all time. It's been really fun to watch as a supporter. Excited for where the club is going, which I'm the most excited for, and excited to see how the second part of the year turns out too.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of potential there. I mean, hopefully after the $600 million checkbook that we just spent. But yeah, so just a quick overview for everyone. We're going to kind of go through that record-breaking transfer list that we had, kind of give grades on each transfer that we made. And then we'll also talk about the future of Chelsea and where we think some players should go and kind of just the outlook of what is our club. So getting right into it, Mr. Wine. Last summer, Mr. Bowley, I always get his name wrong,
Yeah.
joined our club and brought in a lot of money with him. I want to kind of get these. It's funny, we were talking a little about this before we started. Our January transfer signings, like, sheesh, what were we thinking? Like,
Yeah, I
I'm like just
think
looking at these first three that I'm about to go off and give grades on, and like, wow, like I think we're not starting great.
yeah, I think when you look at what January turned into from where we started last summer, I think there was a point where both of us had texted each other last summer saying kind of like what the hell is going on. I think the biggest thing for me is looking at Boley as a owner or part owner of the teams in which he has owned in the past and currently. Like you look at the Dodgers, you look at some of the other teams that he's been involved with, as well as some of his business transactions. It's all um, like I like to use a term of when you put your nuts on the scale, does the needle move? And he's a guy where the needle moves quite heavily.
I
So
love it.
yeah, whenever I look at him, it's big time investments. I think when he gets here last summer, he knows there's an immediate need for, I mean, kind of foreshadowing what we're going to talk about, but forwards. I think that's kind of like the overlying theme of like, I think whenever he came into it, he had the right guys taking a look into saying, what do we need? I don't think they went about it the correct way, but like, what do we need? And I think that the idea as far as positions that they caught on were awesome. Do I think they were the right signings? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get into those, but um, yeah, I think you bring up a really good point with his other clubs, and I think I brought this up in one of our or the like last podcast with the Meccas. What he did with the Dodgers, like he went nuts. He signed a bunch
Yeah.
of different big name people, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, where's this money coming from?" He's pretty much doing the exact same thing in the Premier League, and he's
Yeah.
breaking records. So getting into it to start it off, I don't even. It's funny because I truly think this is our worst one, Jake. So I'm starting us off with a doozy. Mark Cucurella was our first signing in the summer from Brighton, $60 million, 24 years old. Um, if I'm just going to be honest with you, Jake, I am not impressed. I have not been impressed
Yeah.
for a little bit. For 60 million, he should be putting in 9 out of 10 performances every single game, and he is not. I think when he was at
Yeah.
Brighton with a smaller price tag, he was able to put in those seven seven rated performances and be okay. But now when he's on Chelsea with a $60 million price tag, that's not going to cut it for us, and I think it's showing a lot.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is when you're playing outside of a top six club, or at least like money wise and size wise, you're playing outside of that. And then moving into a club where you're getting paid not only that much, but you're also supposed to be the guy that's supposed to create competition with Ben Chilwell. I think it shows in spades of what kind of quality Chilwell is whenever he's healthy. I think that's always the big thing is whenever he's in the game, he shows the ability to get forward and do things that Kukurea is not able to do. I think the overlying thing about Kukurea for me is just the eye test and just because if you look at him on FOTMob, he's fine. Like he puts in 7.5 ratings, he's doing
Mind
just
blowing. You
fine.
mentioned it on the podcast. Like
Yeah.
told me at a 7.7 rating, and he was arguably the
Yeah.
worst player on the pitch.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is like part of me thinks Graham Potter's just kind of like looking at him, just being like, okay, he was my boy before, and then he's still doing well in FOTMob. So like clearly these people might not know what they're talking about whenever they judge it. But dude, the eye test is terrible.
Yeah,
It's not good.
we're giving grades on these. I'm giving him an F on this one because I think return on investment for me is a big one, and I just do not see us coming anywhere close to selling Mark Cucurella in the future for anywhere near $60 million.
Yeah.
He's a good depth guy, possibly. Like I'm hoping Ben Chilwell comes back in and just slots right back into that starting lineup, and we don't really have to worry about it. And he can play in FA Cups and competitions where we need that depth. So like I definitely think that, but for 60 million, Jesus,
Yeah,
be doing that.
yeah. My rating kind of set around like a C minus or a D plus.
Yeah,
I
this
think for
one's
the position he's going to fill, whenever Chilwell's back and healthy, barring that we don't move Chilwell or anything like that's what scares me and why he drifts closer to that D territory is that like because of the money that's put in for Cucurella, you might not be able to sign Chilwell long term or be able to keep him long term.
yeah.
And that's what scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I'll play a little devil's advocate here. Um, Man City did want him at one point as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's has to be some quality in him there. I mean, we paid $60 million for him. So he was
Yeah.
Brighton's player of the year before. So clearly there may be something in there. And it could just be that pressure thing I'm talking about. I think a lot of these guys, and I wanted to bring this up, is they're expected to put in 9 out of 10 performances now. They're coming
Yeah.
from clubs to where they could kind of just like have okay games and then have a great one like every once in a while and look really, really well. And then
Yeah.
come to Chelsea, we need that every single game. And it's a lot of pressure on some of them.
100%. And I think there's a big portion of it where I think when you're coming into pressure like that, there's certain guys that we'll get onto later that have handled that extremely well. And especially guys that now, like looking at the team as guys that you can rely on. And so I think that's the thing for me where, out of 19 games having 3 clean sheets, but like obviously when you have Thiago Silva and Benoit Badiashile as your two center backs, like that makes it a little bit easier, at least in my opinion. His only 3 clean sheets comes on games where he's played with those two.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. All right, moving on to the next one. And once again, like reading the name just like hurts my stomach. Raheem Sterling from
Way
Manchester
too much
City.
money. Way too much money.
$47.5 million at the age
Way too
of
much.
28. So one thing I did want to say at the time that this because we're forgetting that this happened in the summer. So
Mhm.
at the time of this signing, I didn't think it was awful, right? I
Yeah.
was like, okay, he wasn't bad at City. He put in good performances every once in a while. Same with England. He put in some good performances in the Euros. So I thought we were getting a quality player that could come in and bring some sort of impact. I still kind of think he could be, but we have not seen anything of what Raheem Sterling was at Manchester City, and I don't think it is a good signing for us now, especially with all the new players we just brought in playing the
Yeah.
same exact position.
Yeah.
I think almost wouldn't say we're giving up on him, but like it's almost like at the time it was an okay signing, but now it just doesn't look so good because I don't think we're going to get our money back on that one either.
No, I don't think you're coming anywhere close for it because I'm pretty sure at the beginning of the year he was Chelsea's highest paid player,
Yes.
which is insane.
Yeah.
And I mean to kind of look at what he's given as like his body of work does not equate to the amount of money that we have put in for him. I think that's the overlying issue, at least for me. I mean, in Premier Leagues, he's had 16 appearances, 4 goals, 2 assists, which, like, by the way, technically does lead the team in points, I'm pretty sure, or tied for, which
Wild.
isn't going to cut it. Yeah, it's just it's a underwhelming forward group. I think that again, the idea of what I talked about earlier of signing the right positions was there. I think he was the guy that was available. He's had a good record with England and other teams over the past couple of years. He's a guy that becomes available, and that's who you go and blow your load on. Kind of sucks.
Yeah,
I
and I
think
also
for me, kind of still sits kind of in that C to B range, like B minus maybe.
yeah,
Like
mine was a
I
my
think,
grade would be a C for him for sure. Because I'm still
yeah,
hoping like he's still like Champions League sub, a sub here
yeah,
and there, or I mean, hey, a start in the FA Cup. Like he still has some quality in him. I hope. I could be completely wrong. He could just be awful, which I mean he could be, and I
yeah.
don't even
And
know.
I think part of it too is like you see him come on late against Fulham this last game, and like he and Medwicki kind of worked fairly well together. Definitely created some opportunities, but definitely failed to execute on a couple as well. So I think it's gonna be for him. It's gonna be a really rough future if his career stays moving on with Chelsea. Like not only is that a lot of money for us, and so we're expecting a lot of him, but there's a lot of guys in front of him, at least in my opinion.
No, I completely agree. Alrighty, the next one. We can kind of go over this one quickly. It's Eddie Beach from Southampton, age 19, young goalkeeper. It looks like he's going to be in our development squad.
Yeah,
I don't know a lot about him. I don't know if you do, but hey, another signing for us. I think it was a free transfer.
yeah.
Um,
Not enough to write about, at least as of yet. He's still so young, and as a goalkeeper, you kind of got to give him time to develop.
Absolutely. The next one, I'm really interested to see how you take your take on this one because mine's not good on it. It's Koulibaly from Napoli for 33
Yeah,
million, age
yeah,
31.
yeah,
This one, another one for me, Jake. At the beginning, I was like, okay, good signing. A lot of other clubs really have wanted Koulibaly for the last couple of years.
yeah.
For 33 million, to be fair, I don't think that's a crazy price tag, but I also don't think he's our future center back. I'm going to say it right now to you, Jake.
No.
I think the Premier League is way too fast. I don't think he's good with his feet. Yes, does he have some bright moments here and there? He can make a crunching tackle and
Yeah,
crazy aerial battles, but with the
yeah,
ball at his foot and you have a passer like Thiago Silva next to you, like I don't know if he's going to cut it. And once again, it's another one of those signings where we made it and I was like, "Oh, okay, like this isn't bad," but now I'm just like, "Oh, like what are we going to do?" I don't think we're going to I mean, we might make our money back on this one. 33 mil. I mean, maybe a team needs a center back down the line and we can get rid of him. I don't know, but for me, probably another C, like another C grade for that one.
yeah. I'd have to kind of live around there too. I think the biggest thing for me is whenever you're that big of a man and you seem so small with the ball on your feet, it the biggest thing is he doesn't require a lot just from a physical presence because he's so large. He can win aerial duels, things like that. But whenever he has the ball at his feet, it's proven that he has done poor things with it. And I think now, kind of again, the same thing with Sterling and Kukurea is his job gets even harder now. You get all those guys coming in this year, like Benoit Badiashile. This is the second time I've talked about him, but again, 3 games, 3 clean sheets. It seems, yeah, same. I mean, I got him up here too. It's he and Thiago Silva have something figured out with the way that they communicate and the way that they operate together, and it's been awesome. So I think again, kind of agree on rating on something like that. It's just I don't see where he goes from here.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but this was a position that I really wanted us to look into during this transfer window was center back.
Yeah,
I truly think we did a pretty good job at it with the
yeah,
amount of talent and some of the names that we brought in. He like if you think about it, the three that we brought in, I think he's probably the least, and he's still a decent center back.
yeah. And having Rudiger and Christensen leave in the same summer is not a good look for
No.
your brick wall backline that it's been for the past 2 years, especially. So it's tough to see, especially you see a guy like Rudiger who obviously has his accolades and whatnot, and that's kind of the position that he fills into is not a great look. Um, at the time seemed like a great signing, not so much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Next one is Amari Hutchinson from Arsenal, free transfer, 19
Yeah,
bucks, attacking midfielder. I didn't know he was in our Chelsea youth before he went to Arsenal. I found that out when like doing a
yeah,
little bit of research on that. I mean, I think he'll probably be in our U21s for a little bit.
Yeah.
and maybe possibly go on loan. I don't know if you have much on this guy.
No, nothing for me. Kind of the same thing. I mean, realistically, I think he might have two appearances on the year, maybe one. I think big thing is just giving him time to develop. I think
Absolutely.
potentially using him on loan, to even potentially different leagues and stuff like that might help him a ton.
Agree. All right, the next one I actually really like a lot. It's and I can't pronounce his name to save my life. Um, Chukwuemeka.
Chukwuemeka. Yeah.
Chukwuemeka from
Yeah.
Aston Villa, $20
Yep.
million, age
Yep.
19. He's come
Yep.
on a couple of the last games, and
Yep.
I've been thoroughly impressed. I think he's brought some spark, and especially when I looked up his age and I saw that it was 19, I was like,
Yeah.
wow. So
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of happy about this one. This one was one of my higher rated ones. I think he is a 6-year contract. I'm
Yeah.
not exactly sure on
Long
that
term.
one. I can look that up, and is another one of those long-term young guys that I think could potentially be a big role in our side.
Yeah, I think, he's listed as a midfielder, but I think the last two times we've seen him, he's played kind of more of an offensive role, sitting like very, very far forward. And
Yep.
you can kind of tell that he doesn't have necessarily that prowess moving from the front line, but potentially seeing at a midline might be great. Um, I think that especially for his age and the dollar amount, like I think it's kind of one of those betting situations where I think even if he excels next year, Potts maybe a few assists, maybe a goal or two, definitely raises his value a ton in case we do need to move him at some point.
I couldn't agree with you more. That was going to be my next point. Is I definitely think he is one of those guys where we will make our return on investment. Like he
Yeah,
will. He's 19 years old. I don't see him declining anytime soon, unless
yeah.
I will say I have heard injuries could play a part, and hopefully that doesn't happen. As we know, Chelsea is ruined with that at the moment.
Very
I
prone
I
as
give
of the
this
last few
one
years.
I give this one an A minus.
Yeah, I kind of give it a B. I think that's something where the
I think business
unknown.
wise, great.
Yeah, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. The next one is Caseta from Inter Milan, 16.8 million, age 20. Very highly rated young player. So I was very excited. Interested
Yeah,
though that he's playing with our U21s.
yeah.
Another 6-year contract, but I another one of those guys that I think for the money, not an awful signing, someone that we can possibly see in the future and hopefully provide some spark.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of what you saw leading into the early part of the year is getting youth and especially taking for some other clubs or guys that have been in there, through the youth program at times and coming back into Chelsea jerseys, I think is a big part of it, giving them time to develop and especially develop together where they're not getting loaned out, at least at, sitting at an under 21 stage playing together. I think like especially with sometimes chemistry can get started at a young age. You go away and do your loans and then come back at the same time and you see it work out.
Yeah, I agree. Next one. This one's a big dollar amount. We got Wesley Fofana from Leicester for $75 million, age 22. So
Yeah.
this one, I will say, I was super excited about, and I still kind of am. Um, I think there's potential in him just by his talent alone and his age. I will
Yep.
say him getting injured immediately in having back-to-back or knee injuries is like not a great look and not fun for us. But I'm
Yeah.
hoping that he does bring some value to our back
Yeah.
in the future. And the only thing is that 75 million. Once again, I've been talking about it a lot. I don't know if we're going to get that return on investment for him. Hopefully, he stays with us for a while and puts in a good um, shift. But it's the injuries that are really scaring me because I think the talent's there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when I look at what my, back four and or back five looks like, I think, he's one of those guys where I see him in there,
I agree.
moving forward, especially for the term that we have him for, potentially signing Thiago Silva in the coming months. I think that's where you really start looking at, Thiago Silva, when you look at our back line, like is the guy you build around between him and Reece James. Like those are the two guys where you start to kind of at least for the next 2 to 3 years, you
I
have
was gonna
him for
say
Silva while
building.
he's
I don't
still
know.
healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it just gives you time to where you can build up Fofana, you can build up Shalaba, you can build up Bada to kind of move into that role, once Silva's done.
Oh yeah, I mean, name a better coach to be being taught the center back position than Thiago,
Seriously,
as he's
dude's a
like
freak. Yeah,
actively showing you how to play the position.
yeah. Seriously, I mean, he's, I
Royce.
mean, at least for me, by far Chelsea's best player,
No,
without like hands down.
I completely agree. I still think he's a top five center back in the Premier League. I also think, like, I know we just mentioned it, but like a lot of the center backs that we just brought in, I think it's huge that they get to see him every single day, train with him every single day, pick his
Yeah,
brain. That gets me really excited for the future, especially because, like we were saying, some of these ages, they're super young. We have a lot of 20-year-old, 22-year-old youngsters.
impressionable minds is the big thing. Guys that have the work ethic and are willing to, willing to listen, or at least it seems like so far.
Yeah.
Really haven't had any issues from any of these guys, which is great too.
Yeah. Alrighty. The next one. I'm gonna introduce him as probably the best magician I've seen in a while, because this man came into two clubs, stole a lot of money, and is just about to dip. We got Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from Barcelona for $10.3 million. Jake
This is my
Wine.
worst signing.
Jake Wine. This is one thing I want to say with you that I'm upset most about Chelsea through this entire transfer window.
No.
He spent $600 million, right? And one of the most important positions that we needed to fill was striker.
Yeah.
Aubameyang is the only striker that we purchased. And
Yeah. It's
what were
tough.
we thinking?
It's tough
And
when you
even
look at
to
it.
Barcelona, I was mind blown. I was like, what were
Yeah.
they doing? And then when he joined
Yeah.
us, I was, whew,
That was officially when I became scared of the bully regime
yeah,
and wasn't sure of what the future looked like for the club.
yeah,
I I think it's the accumulation of what happened the first part of the season, and then that was kind of like the cherry on top of why in the world are we doing this? I think it didn't make any sense, especially as a guy who really didn't do anything for Barcelona. Obviously has had numerous accolades from earlier in his career. Say we got him 6, 7 years ago, that's a completely different story.
absolutely. The only reason I'm not giving him the worst rating like you were, and I'm sticking with Cucurella, is because it was only 10 mil. Like, and it's funny I'm saying
It's
this,
still my worst, bro.
I know I can hear Hoover screaming in my
Yeah,
ear.
it's
Are
the
you
worst, man.
like? And yeah, sorry, we spent a shit ton of money, so 10 million isn't
Yeah,
crazy for us at the moment. So that's
yeah,
where like Cucurella is $60 million. Like, oh my
yeah,
word, that's a lot of money. This
yeah.
one at least, like, I think he's gonna go to the MLS. We'll get rid of him and then kind of be done.
Still my argument between like Kukurea versus Aubameyang is Kukurea can at least get on the field.
True, he's
I,
starting
I
for us.
think I think Aubameyang doesn't touch the field the rest of the year,
Oh yeah,
and
you're right.
if he does, it's just kind of like a consolidation. Like here you go, here's a participation medal kind of deal. So I
So
think
D's, I gave him a D. You give him an F.
I give him a solid F.
Yep. Alrighty, the last one in the summer signing list was Zachariah from Juve on loan at age 26. I love this. I don't know about
I
you. This man, at first, I was a little iffy on it. I hadn't really heard much, but of course, I was looking into all of his highlights. And I think
Yeah.
the time that he has played for us, he has looked very good. I have been very impressed with him. And the fact that he's on loan, I think, is a cherry on top.
Yeah, I think using him as a loan is great. I
Yeah.
think that um the tough part for me is just injury, man. I
Yeah.
think that's yeah, seeing him play in 4 games is tough. Like that's hard to see, especially as a guy who realistically over the last 3, 4 months is a guy that we should have relied on very heavily, and to see him only play 4 games is really hard, especially when you have a guy on loan for a certain amount of time. Like you want to use him the whole thing, like foreshadowing a little bit of Jao Felix, but like it's just tough whenever you spend that much money for a certain amount of time. I get you're signing contracts. It's the same kind of idea, but whenever essentially as a loan you're supposed to be being used heavily, it's tough.
Nope, I completely agree. But I'm hoping when he does come back, he provides some spark in our midfield because I do think
Yeah.
he's a good box to box midfielder.
Yeah, and I have him as a solid B,
Yeah,
like
that was
just
going to be
solid
mine.
through and through.
Yep.
I think when he's been on, he's been great. I think that, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes
Yep, I
because
agree.
he's due to return soon as well, I believe,
Yeah,
if not already.
I think mid-February was when I saw, but
Yeah,
of course I never can believe
that's what
that.
every player on the
I was
Chelsea
gonna say.
lineup.
And it's Fat Mob, so like how much do we know
Yeah,
that or
yeah,
not? Okay,
yeah.
so now we're on to our January signings. And
Let's
this
have some fun.
I was gonna
This is
say
what I
this is where
like.
we have some good signings. I think in
Yeah.
January, correct me, you have the number. I think it was 340 million. What was
$341 million.
spent in January?
Yeah, just spent in January. The only thing that you don't see is going to be in Kunku, who technically he's part of that 341 as an agreed upon contract, but obviously we won't see him until at least the summer.
Yep,
So I think the overlying theme is youth. Prior to Enzo and Gusto signing, the average age of our January signings was 21 years old,
love that.
which is awesome. I
Yep,
think that, setting up for the next 4 or 5 years, even into six, seven, eight for some of these guys that we have on contract long term. I think I think they did as a whole staff extremely well to maneuver this money around for different periods of time. I think you look at some of the signings, like sorry to kind of jump ahead, but one that I look at really heavily is Andre Santos.
yep,
Young Brazilian midfielder, can move upfield very well. Just got done playing in the U20 South America tournament for Brazil and had 5 goals in 6 games. I think a goal scoring midfielder can be used at times as a winger is extremely impressive. I think at his age, that only gives him time to excel. So in theory, could potentially see him in a Chelsea jersey over the next like 3 weeks ish. It'll just be dependent on what they want to do with him.
yep.
I think
18 years
after
old.
yeah, I mean, the kid is a stud, at least from everything that I watched. I watched a bunch of his highlights from that tournament and seemed to know what he wanted to do with the ball whenever he got it, which for me, as far as our midfielders have played for the most of the year, I'm very happy with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and we can start with him if we really want. Age 18,
Yeah.
Andre Santos, Vasco da Gama is where we got him from. Um,
Yep.
on my website, it doesn't say the dollar amount, says it's disclosed. So I don't know if you have that in front of you, but
At least for what I'm seeing here, it's $11 million for 7.5 years for $1.5 million a year.
awesome.
So yes, long-term potential risk, but if he keeps excelling at this clip, like I think it could be one of the biggest steals out of our grouping of, 8, 9 guys.
No,
I
I
think
completely
that's
agree.
potentially our best.
I completely agree, and I think a theme that I continue to go back to is that return on investment. I think he's one of those
Yeah.
guys, and for at the age and for that price, that we're going to make some money on him, which is awesome. And while in the process, he's going to play for us and provide a spark for us. Hopefully, I keep saying provide a spark because
Yeah.
Jesus, though of recent, hasn't been not sparkful at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, it's a solid A. I
Yeah,
think for $1.5 million a year, if that's true at $11 million, like, come on.
no,
Like, how
I
do you
agree.
not say yes to that? The only thing is, it's 7.5 years. But again, he's so young. You think of how long you have until he's 25. And
Yep,
then realistically, from there, you can always move him around from there.
yep.
Like, it's all good for us.
I can completely agree. But so going back to the beginning of this January signing to
Yep.
the person that we both have in our background, Benoit Badiashile from Monaco for 35 million, age 21. Boy, do I like this man. And
I love it.
it's so before we get into him, I do want to point out he was not on our Champions League roster for these upcoming games.
Which is shocking.
It is very shocking to me. Um, and I don't even want to say that because I don't know if that's true. But I think him starting against Fulham was Potter telling him that like I'm not putting you in the Champions League side, but you are like we trust you and like
Yeah.
you are going to be our future. I need to, and this is where I don't want to say it because it's Champions League and we really need to fricking win that game. But I'm
Yeah.
thinking Potter's almost like I need to make some people happy
Yeah.
I'm going to have this conversation with you. You're our long-term center back, so I'm going to have to keep you off for now. That's what I'm thinking. And once again, I could be completely wrong in that.
Yeah, and looking at a couple of the names that were listed on there, like Wesley Fofana is one that realistically is one we've kind of referenced already of like has to be coming back soon. That's one for me where like maybe that's the guy that gets kind of, pushing Buddy Ishio out. And especially for Fofana's body of work prior, I think that makes sense. But for me, since he's put on a Chelsea jersey, 3 games, 3 clean sheets, can't complain about a damn thing he does. I mean, I think he and Thiago Silva, again, just figuring it out, man.
Yep.
Like not the greatest team in the world, but the biggest thing is having a rock solid defense for the way that in which we've played for the last 4 or 5 years is massive.
Yep.
Can't score a goal to save our lives, but at least for right now, we're keeping them out of the net too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you and was going to just piggyback on what you said. Like the style of play we've been playing, Thiago Silva has been our most passer for the past 2 years. So obviously,
Yeah,
our defense requires us for possession to pass the ball around a lot. And I think Benoit on the ball has been one of the more composed that we've seen from our new signings. And I'm very excited about him because obviously his size and stature defensively is super nice as well. I also think a big thing with him is he's French, so he's going to be
yeah,
playing on the France national team and in a top side for years to come. I also think Varane, like him and Varane, or even when Varane is kicked out, I think he's kind of the next one in line. So I'm super excited for him in that
yeah,
as well.
yeah. For a big man, moves extremely well with the ball. You see him a couple times against Fulham, being able to at least push it onto Fulham's half, which especially out of like a guy like Koulibaly, you don't have that. And I think that's a big reason why he's done so well as of late.
Yep. And again, the price tag, 35 million. I don't think that's
Yeah.
outrageous. So I'm
Yeah,
going
35 million for 7.5 years comes in at 4.4 a year.
yeah,
Again, A for me, A plus. Yeah, best at least for me out of the guys that we've signed the most promise out of. I think the guy that's delivered immediately since putting on a uniform consistently, that's the guy.
I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. I'll probably change my answer to an A because that's a fact.
Yeah.
Next one, another Fofana, David Fofana from
Yeah.
Mold,
Yeah.
age 20. Once again, we saw him come on last game for a little bit. Um, this one's interesting to me. Age 20, a young signing in one of those positions where like I feel like we didn't need a lot of more
Yeah.
people in. I mean, hopefully his youth provide some value to him in the future. I don't know
Yeah.
much about this guy. I mean, when he came in, it was fun and interesting. I do think he actually provided a spark when he did
Yeah.
come in.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, it was like fun to watch almost when he came in. So I'm intrigued by this
Yeah.
one a lot.
Yeah, I am as well, especially for $11 million for 6.5 years. You're in at $1.7 million. Again, it's another guy where at that dollar amount, it's a steal, at least for me. It's something where you can get your return on investment for $11 million. I mean, that's less than you sign Enzo Fernandez per year. Like, that's for me, that's a big deal. That's somebody that, one game, like, definitely was towards that second half of that Fulham game, one of the guys pushing play forward. I
Yep.
think realistically, he probably could have potentially gotten a couple shots on net, but yeah, great, great.
Yep, I completely agree. The next one is Santos. We already went over him.
Yep.
And then this one, wow, was he? So it's Jao Felix, Atletico Madrid, on
Yeah.
loan, age 23. This one, Jake, hurts my head because business wise, I think it was so dumb. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like on loan,
Dollar amount wise,
yes,
yes.
dollar amount wise, especially
Yeah.
with his red that he just got.
Yeah.
Boy, that 50 minutes that we got to see him
Yeah.
was he impressive.
Yeah. I mean, just so different from anything that we've seen all year. Like
Completely.
just I mean, a complete opposite of what boring Chelsea football has looked like for even the past 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
Like I think there hasn't been a guy that's executed that much creativity just in a short period of time. Somebody that, and from what I've heard, like I follow all the fan accounts and all that stuff. Apparently there is a way for him to sign after. So That for me would be massive. Do I expect it? Absolutely not.
So I think Joey was telling me that if he doesn't want to go back to Atletico, there is a possibility that we could sign him, which I think
Yeah.
is going to happen because Simeone does not like João Felix. So
Yeah.
that one's interesting.
That's
But if you take that aside and we don't have the buy clause, oh my gosh, business wise, what on earth were we thinking?
I think again, it's talking about a bully,
Yeah,
right? What does he like
tap
to
the money.
do? It's just trying in any way. I think what I like is especially for an owner such as himself is like a guy that's not going to go down without a fight,
Yeah,
right? Especially at that point, goal scoring was. I mean, it's been the same way for 4 fucking years. I don't know why I act like it's just this year. It's been the same way. It's just not enough goals. Great defensively, moves the ball well, possesses the ball well, doesn't score a goal. And I think you go and get one of the guys who's offensively extremely creative. You think at the time you're signing them to play, alongside realistically Mason and Kai and what that kind of looks like as well. Um, I think it's at the time was a good thought process, bad dollar amount,
yeah,
especially after the fucking red card.
yeah. I
That
mean,
makes it look horrible.
like $3 million for each game he's missing right now, which is
Which is absurd. It's
almost.
such an absurd amount of money.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say and what I thought you were alluding to is I watched Chelsea's training videos and oh my God, he just
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
training
dude.
like
He's so good.
he's. But and it's so I mentioned this on the last pod and I think you'll appreciate it well. I had kind of I wasn't gonna say coming to Jesus moment, but it was like a realization, and I think Zhao was kind of the first inkling of like what a world class midfield, not world class. I say that term way too loosely. I'm sorry,
You
all
do
the
say
other
it too
people.
loosely.
I do a good midfielder looks like, and I think with Zhao when he those first 50 minutes, I was like, oh okay, that was good. And then the guy that we're about to talk in a little bit, Enzo, kind of put a stamp that Mason Mount and Kai have not been performing at where they need to be. So.
They're ass this year, in my personal opinion.
I
Might
hate
be a tough
saying that.
rating, but
It just hurts me. But okay, rating for Zhao though, I'm giving it a C. Like, yeah,
yeah,
do I think a player I'm super excited for because I think you mentioned as well creativity is something we have lacked in the final third, and I think he brings nothing but that. Like I think when he's on the
yeah,
ball, I have no idea what he's doing with it half the time, which is something that I like and a lot of defenders won't like.
yeah.
So yeah, but once again, that price amount, I have to give it a C.
Yeah, I think for the quality of player you're bringing in is for sure an A. A guy that's proven that he is very good when you're looking from a business standpoint. Like for me, that sits at like a D, and I think that it kind of comes to like a C plus maybe. I think that being on a Champions League roster, having him stay on there, I think is very important. I think when you look towards, having what I would consider kind of a shit year, and then you have a guy like that can play in those Champions League, which we're still very much in, and especially after these signings, the best thing for us is, you guys kind of alluded to it on a podcast is, we had almost a full 2 week break like after getting all these guys.
Yeah.
I think that's for us is massive, especially because like you look at Enzo as a guy that I think he trained one time with the team and then played the next day.
On the field.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's only going to get
Tim
better,
Ream, shout
right?
out.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah,
agree.
seriously.
No, I agree. And I'm hoping. I'm hoping and I think we brought in Zhao specifically for Champions League. Like I literally think
Yeah,
it was like all these injuries, we need something for all these competitions. Let's bring him in and have
yeah,
him focus on that, which hey, maybe it'll work out.
yeah,
Next one we have is Mudryk from Shakhtar. This
yeah,
one's another whopping $88.5 million, dollars, age 22. Before we get into this, I do want to bring up with him, Arsenal was heavy on him for weeks,
yeah,
very close to signing him. He was posting pictures with them, and we kind of came in and swiped him on up. I think if I'm being honest, like I think it has a little bit to do with us robbing. Like I'm not saying that's the whole reason we went,
yeah,
but I do think we were like, oh, this is just another cherry on top. We're going to take him from Arsenal. Um,
yeah,
but what a dollar amount. Sheesh.
yeah. Big dollar amount for a guy who hasn't played against anybody worth a damn. I think that's the big thing that most people who are not Chelsea fans will say.
Yeah.
I think that you see his first game that he came in and was electric. He was great. I think for the period of time in which they gave him, I think listening to what Potter had to say after that game and then after the Fulham game for why he was taken off at half, why he was only given a certain amount of minutes the first game, a lot of it is because he had such a long break not playing in the World Cup. And because in the Ukrainian league, they take such a long break before and after that.
Yep.
So, like, realistically, hadn't touched a ball, or I shouldn't say that, but hasn't been on a field actually playing a game since like middle of November is kind of what it looked like. And I could be wrong in saying that, but a very long time. So part of it was getting him back in shape, not exhausting him right off the start. And then last game, from what it sounded like was he was sick as a dog before the game. Had
Yeah.
a very bad cold, at least that's what they say. I'd play through a cold playing hockey, it's fine. But whenever you're running for 90 minutes, I can see why it's quite a bit different. So I think part of it too is just giving them time to come back, and especially for a lot of these guys, you see the same thing happen to Reese. You see a couple of these other guys coming in at forward and stuff like that. And I think there's reason behind it.
Yeah. He's one of those ones. I'm happy it's a long-term contract because it spreads it out over those years.
Yep.
I will say, um, he did when he came on. I said Spark a whole bunch of times, but when he did come on, not this last game, the game before, you are correct. I thought he was electric, and he once again brought that. I think the creativity that we've been missing.
Yeah.
This most recent game against Fulham, I'm hoping it was the sickness, and of course, it could be me hearing all of the boys talking on the last podcast and saying that was complete BS. But I'm hoping that is because that half I was not impressed at all, and I'm hoping that he's one of those guys that we can make a return on our investment on, and just that $88.5 million, like you said, from a league where he's not really playing any big name clubs. It's nervy for me, but
Yeah.
the first game for the time that he come on, I'm hoping that's what we get to see from the future.
Yeah, and I think it will too. I think getting the right guys around him is going to be huge too. I think part of that is understanding your relationship with him and Chilwell or whoever is say he plays on that left side is huge. And I think that's again a big reason why Reece James is so huge because whoever plays on that right side is going to be infinitely better because he's on there.
Yeah.
I think playing with Kukurea as opposed to playing with Chilwell is going to be massively different. I think when he gets Ben on his right side or on the left side with him, I think it's going to make him so much better as somebody that can overlap and do different things to make it to where he has other options in that space.
Yeah, I will. One other thing I wanted to bring up about him is just the reason why I guess I'm so like lenient on it is I think it's the position. We've been
And
trying to fill that left wing position for so long. I mean, let
yeah,
me let me go through. How much money have we spent on that position alone? Like, geez, just
stupid.
left-sided players, attacking players. I mean, Zhao prefers that side. Sterling prefers that side. Mudryk prefers that side. Like, that's where I get really nervous because we have a lot of guys trying to fight for that position worth a lot of money. And another thing with this is I keep going back to it is that price tag puts so much pressure on him. He was in a side that he could put in an okay effort, score a goal here and there, and look great. But now when he's at Chelsea, we need him to put in 9, 10 performances or 10 out of 10
Yeah.
performances. He's $90 million. I need perfect now. You're $90
Yeah.
million. I need you to score some goals. So like that's where I'm like so nervous for him because there's a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, and I think like just looking at depth chart on that left wing, I mean, at least as of right now, Felix is listed as a center forward.
Okay.
Take that as what you will. But apart from that, you have Mudryk, Sterling, Pulisic, and Hudson-Odoi, who all are labeled as left wingers. And I think that you look at a guy like CP and you kind of feel for him because realistically, I think that kind of creates the writing on the wall for him of like kind of what that looks like for the future,
Yeah.
which sucks.
Yep.
You know, that's my boy. I don't want to see him leave, but at the same time, I think not a great fit, or at least through the past couple managers hasn't been a great fit.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right. The next one, Nani
Madweki.
Thank you. Thank you. You're saving me over here. Jeez, these names.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
PSV, 29 million, age 20. I really like this guy.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. Once again, similar position though, wing attacker. That nerves me, but for 29 million, I'm very happy. Age 20. He's
Yeah.
come on. um, in the last couple of games, and I think performed well. Once again, I keep saying Spark, but that's what I'm going to go to because
Dude,
we're so boring. And some of these new guys, when they come on, they're actually like trying to take people on one, which we haven't seen for so long. So, like, I apologize for my continuous use of the word Spark, but that's truly what it was to me. When he comes on, it's not our typical boring play it through the midfield to the wing, back to the midfield, and trying to find something down the middle. Like I think he was actually taking people on. So I'm
yeah.
with this one again.
Yeah, not just throwing on crosses. I think one really cool stat from him that I saw in doing a little bit of research is he's in the top 1% of dribbling success in the Dutch league since his senior debut. I think that's something that you saw quite heavily is that he's willing to go at people. He's not just looking to feed it into the wide side and an overlap and allow for your wing backs to just throw in crosses.
Yep.
I think that's something that, especially a lot of the guys, you look at Mudryk, you look at Felix, you look at him, like really as your what I look at as my three for right now, if I was to put money on a game, like that's who I have in my three, at least for me.
Mhm.
Um,
To be fair, I
I
think
think
mine is the
that,
same at this point. I used to have
yeah,
it there, but after that, I can't even argue it anymore.
yeah, and I think the big thing is you had referenced it when I was on the podcast last time of using kind of like a triangle, right? And giving Zhao kind of the option to put himself forward in that triangle or behind it and kind of allow him to float and just kind of see where he sees himself and give him that creativity. Know that Mudryk and Madweki are just going to run at balls, be able to press, do all those things. And especially with the way that I think that especially like Zhao and Enzo can play together, I think is going to be really fun just to kind of clog up that midfield and give also Zhao the space to be able to take the ball forward.
No, I completely agree, and he's one of the ones that I'm actually excited for. I give this one a B in my opinion.
Yeah, I have it as a B plus. I mean, somebody that is somebody very different than what we've always had of
And
just a
age
very
20.
pass first. Yeah, a very pass first forward. I think is something that I don't want anymore. I want a guy that's going to dribble and be able to shoot the ball at some point. And I
Just
think
something
that's something.
different. Just something.
Yes, anything.
Yeah. Alrighty, next one we got Gusto from Lyon for 26.3 million, age 19. Right back.
Yeah,
This one I was actually very happy with.
same.
A lot of people may think that's interesting, especially with Reece James in our lineup and on our in our side healthy
Yeah,
again. I
yeah,
still believe Reece James is arguably the best right back in the world, but as we've seen injuries, man. He can't get out of them. And as
yeah,
Billaquetta, I'm sorry for a while. You've been a Chelsea legend, but you're just not cutting it anymore. And we
yeah.
need someone that we can rely on in that right back position. And as Billaquetta and Reece James at the moment, we cannot. So I'm happy we made a signing here, even though we do have arguably one of the best right backs when fully fit.
Yeah, I think it's depth. I think that similar to what the Cucurella idea was at that time, you have two injury prone wingbacks who are both very, very, very solid. Like especially through parts of last year and the year prior, would have taken those two up against any other wingbacks in the Prem. And I think creating somebody like Gusto because you think you have him and Enzo on the same side and potentially having Madweki or Zhao or whoever the fuck you want to put on the right side as a forward, using those three all the way up the field, I think is going to be huge. Just giving, especially a guy like Gusto, like some of the most egregious slide tackles that I've seen in a while,
Yes.
which I love, but
Yeah.
also like somebody that genuinely like places the ball, or at least to what I've seen, very well on crosses. You see him pot a lot of assists. But again, somebody that's mobile, can move, can run with some of these guys in the Premier League on that right side.
Yeah, but so one thing I will say is you bring up the Cucurella thing, but like the difference here, Jake, is this
Oh
guy's
yeah, that's what I'm
19
saying.
and it's 26 million. Like
Yeah, yeah,
Cucurella is not good, like getting a little old, and it was
yeah,
60. Like, geez, come on, what were
yeah,
we thinking?
yeah.
But yeah,
I will say
I
Gusto looks
like
like he's
him.
45.
Yeah,
He looks like
he
he's 45 years
looks
old.
really old, really, really old.
Yeah, yeah,
For 20, it's crazy. I know once again, I'm saying it again, but 26 million, like, yeah, that's
yeah.
a lot of money. So a lot of people, I can just hear all the other clubs saying, oh, you spent 26 million for depth. But in reality, yeah,
Dude, it's over
it,
7 years, so it's like 3.5 million per year.
Yeah.
So like that's the thing and what you're looking at is creating depth for long periods of time. And I think realistically he's a guy that like say we ever decide to get rid of Reece James because he's not going to cut it and not going to stay healthy in this league. Um, no, I'm not trying to throw that into
I know.
fruition, but like, dude, like right, like it could happen, and I think he's a good guy that can fill that spot whenever Reece James isn't available.
Yeah. My grade on him though is a C, just because, like I kind of said there before, I'm hoping that he is a higher signing than that, but for depth at 26 million, sheesh, that's a lot, especially when you have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at least for me, he sits at a C as well. I think that I hope it remains a C as somebody that doesn't play. I hope that Reece James is in the lineup at least for the foreseeable future.
Completely agree. Alrighty, I really wish I had a soundboard because I would drum roll the crap out of this next one. Another record breaker from our transfer window, Enzo Fernandez from Benfica, $106.8 million, becoming the highest paid professional soccer player in English Premier League history.
Yeah, I guess
Boy, does
one
he deserve
really, yeah, I think just after one game, I think it shows his class like immediately.
it.
I
Yep.
think kind of like a lot of these guys, right? Except it's not in 45-minute spurts or 30-minute spurts. It's a full 90 minutes of, being what I would consider the best player on the ball throughout the entirety of the game.
Yeah.
He possessed it extremely well. He saw his wingers very well. I think he completed 7 out of 8 long passes. I think he won like somewhere around like 10 out of 15 duels, or at least as far as ground duels. Like I think he's going to be a guy that, you see Jorginho leave during this transfer window, and I think he's a guy that does what he does and more. I think is the big thing.
No,
I think he's going to be huge.
no, I completely agree with you. And before I completely start drooling over him, I do want to say, business wise, though, um,
Yeah.
we did what we probably shouldn't have done. The World Cup hype, Young Player of the Year,
Yeah.
a shit ton of money on him. Um,
Yeah.
but I will also say, on the flip side of that, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in the CDM position in the upcoming transfer window from a lot of big clubs, because I think a lot of big clubs are going to be needing that position. And I think Enzo was a very high up on the list for a lot of people. So the fact that we were able to get him when we did makes me very, very happy. And I do think he will not be the highest paid player by the end of it, because I do think there's going to be more. But wow, am I happy that we got him when we did.
Yeah, and I think what I like too is especially, more often than not playing with five backs. I think it gives him the space to where he doesn't feel like he has to play defensively. He has the offensive prowess to be able to play balls forward and also get himself into positions. Like, I mean, man, he almost got one goal. One of the better chances that Chelsea had. Obviously, it's one game, but as long as we continue to see him as far as his value and stock continue to rise, I think it ultimately evens itself out over time.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, um, I also think like the CDM, especially in our Chelsea side, is such an important role, and to have him for 8 years and not having to worry about that position really, um,
Yeah.
moving forward is awesome. And knowing that we have one of the best talents there is, so that makes me super happy. Especially with when you look at like our success that we've had of recent, it's probably mainly in part to Conte, like
Yeah.
in that our rock that we've had for a very long time. And I think
Yeah.
Zoe is a perfect replacement for him in the future. And I also think he can play box to box. So let's say down the line
Yeah.
you get a hard holding six, I'm completely fine with Enzo playing box to box midfield as well, because I think he is that talented in moving the ball. And also he's going to be on an Argentina side for years to come as well.
I
He's
think
getting
that's yeah.
better. Like I'm very, very happy with it. It is a lot of money, so once again the pressure is on. He's the highest paid player in the Prem now, so we'll see how he
Yeah.
does it.
Yeah. And especially being at $12.5 million a year, that definitely puts you in a very specific position where you're expected a lot of yourself. And I think like ultimately, again, it's the accolades that get him that money. I
Yeah,
think it's obviously, having one hell of a year and then now it's time to cash in on it.
yeah, completely agree. And I think this is kind of, as that's our last one. I give it if we're giving a grade, I give it an A minus
Yeah.
probably, just because he is the most anyone's ever spent on a player. And of course, we did that right after he won the World Cup and all the hype around him. So we probably did it
Yeah.
the worst time. But
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's if we don't do it now, I don't know that we win that bid in the summer. And I think that's part of it. And I think that's why Benfica for a long time was so hesitant to get rid of him, is because they were so I think that as the way that Benfica did it was really smart because they declared their dollar amount. They knew what they were going to ask for him in the summer, and they said, if you want to pay that fine, come and do it. Like that's fine, we can get there. But for me, is an A as well. I think it's a hesitant A, obviously with the amount of money that you're pouring into him, but at the same time, like I think it's like probably our best signing,
yeah,
other than Bale for me. I think as far as a value, and then potentially Andre Santos for the future. Looking at the next 7 years of what he can have to offer.
yeah, and I know I said it earlier, but this last game with Enzo, it definitely made me realize the quality that there is in
Yeah, yeah,
position. And I think it's kind of a good transition into what we want to see Chelsea, as we kind of just went through the entire transfer list. Mount and Kai, I know it's a hot topic. I know we've been talking about them for a very long time off the pod and just
yeah,
between our text messages. And I know we disagree a lot. But I will say, I know like I said, I'm just reiterating it. Enzo really did show that those guys are not playing at the level they need to be playing. I'm hoping I haven't completely written off Mason Mount and Kai Havertz yet. Like I think you think differently. I think you think we should just sell them and get rid of them. I'm hoping that the competition that we brought in lights a fire in at least one of them, and they're going to fight for that starting position and show that quality that they did have when we were winning the Champions League with them.
yeah. I don't think I necessarily want to get to a point where we can sell them. If somebody comes knocking down our door for a shit ton of money, I'll say absolutely, here you go, take them. I think the big thing for me is seeing Kai finally, hopefully, like I'm praying to get him out of that striker position, like praying.
And you
I
say that,
think,
but who? Like, we didn't buy a striker. And I know, once again, I said it earlier, but like, that's my biggest frustration. We spent $600 million and we still don't have an out and out striker. Like,
yeah,
what are we doing?
yeah. And I think what's going to be the big thing for him is how he reacts over the next 2 months. I think there was some interest from Bayern potentially looking at him over the transfer window as well. And I think realistically, if he is still underwhelming over that time, I think Chelsea really puts like serious efforts into like, what does this look like? Like, how much, like, what does that potentially look like? I think is the best way to put it. As far as Mason goes, he's kind of like over the last 2 or 3 years, he's won Player of the Year twice for Chelsea over the last 2 years. You can't have. I get he's a midfielder, has 5 points in 20 games, so be it. But like you're relied on so heavily to produce offensively, and what I see is just a lack of effort from Mason.
Yeah,
I don't think it's lack of skill or anything of that nature. I think it's giving up in certain situations, and being a little lackadaisical. I think
interesting.
that especially for Kai, I would love to give him an ability to play, potentially something closer to a cam and just giving him the option to be able to run that, especially say, like kind of like what I was saying and playing that triangle with Madwicki, Mudrik, and Zhao, and just kind of, especially now that you have Enzo and kind of like that holding position, you essentially have six guys that are willing to stay back and can. And then also you have your wingbacks that can help in that situation whenever they need it. So I think it's tough. I've thought very poorly of the two of them all year. And what I hope more than anything is it kicks them out of the lineup for a couple days.
Yeah,
Like give them a couple games to where they can really like they've played more games than anybody else other than Thiago Silva. And I'm not taking Thiago Silva out of the lineup. That's for damn sure. Yeah. So for me, I think if you give them a seat, tell them to that now somebody's, playing above them. Hopefully it does light that spark. It does give them kind of lights a fire under their ass. I think is kind of what I'm hoping for out of those two through this.
completely agree. And another name I kind of wanted to bring up with you as well is Gallagher, because I know
Yeah.
you were heavy on him coming in. And for me,
Yeah.
he just hasn't been putting on the performances that I want or would expect out of him.
Yeah, and I think the same thing. I think that he's definitely been really good at times and really bad at times. So I think one thing when you look at a guy like say like Gallagher versus, think of some of the top midfielders. I think the big thing is like, when you see the two guys and it's like Instagram videos, whatever, when you see guys running on the treadmill and you see like the little guy that's like looks like he's hauling ass to get the same amount of effort out to go to
Yeah.
the same speed. And then you see the big guys that are like just coasting and
Riding
making it
out.
look easy. Yeah, like that's what I look at as
Great
Conor Gallagher,
comparison.
the
That's a
guy
great
that's like
comparison.
putting a massive amount of effort in, and at times it's overcommitting. It's getting too many cards at certain spots. It's something that I think he will hopefully eventually age out of. But I think, at least for me, with the season that he had last year compared to what he's in now, I get you're not on a side where you're, I don't want to say as important, because last year he was so vital to that Crystal Palace team. I think
Ball
it's
was
coming in
at his
and
foot most of the game.
yeah, I think he was one of, if not the guy for them, scoring at big goals at big times, being the guy that is meant to go box to box and do different things. I think he was a very different player and asked to do very different things. I think now it's just learning how to hone that energy and that willingness to go work, because by no means is he lacking in try or effort or whatever you want to call it. He's been one of the hardest workers out of the year for me so far. It's just about, you know, kind of figuring out that game speed, even though he's been playing in the Premier League for the last couple of years. I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
think I think the word that you use that I completely agree with when I think of Conor Gallagher's overcommitment. Like I feel like
yeah.
every single thing he does, he's going full in as hard as he
Yeah,
can, which is
yeah.
not needed at all times. Like
Especially at the midfield position, you
exactly.
don't need to press forward. There's been a couple times where I've seen him like literally past
Alone.
center backs. Yeah, don't need to do that.
Yeah. But another, as we're continuing going through like kind of this Chelsea side, another position I kind of wanted to bring up with you and pick your brain on was our goalie spot. I've been talking with another person that we have in the Mecca of Banter, Joey Beeg. Shout out Joey Beeg, another Chelsea supporter, about this because we're on kind of two different sides. He loves Kepa. I don't like Kepa. I think Mendy's better, but it's funny. We had a 30-minute conversation about it and we were arguing back and forth and we both came to the agreement at the end that we probably need a new goalie. So I kind of wanted to pick your brain because Mendy with his feet is atrocious. Kepa with his hands is atrocious. So what do you think we should do?
My, I have one simple argument, and it's always like, what is a goalie meant to do? He's
True.
meant to stop the fucking ball.
Yeah.
And what does Edward Mendy do really well? It's stop the ball. I
Yeah.
think that's for me is always going to be, I shouldn't say always going to be, but at least as of right now, like he's my guy.
Yeah.
I think that, I think when you're looking at players that you're able to move on in the summer, you look at what Kepa's done for this year. He has 7 clean sheets in 13 games.
I was gonna say
Like,
I will say one thing to you, and Beeg sent me this. He has the highest save percentage in the Prem.
yeah,
Kepa.
it's because we give up like a million shots a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is when you look at his body of work, I think that throughout the year, I've gained a little bit more confidence, but there are goals that kind of mix in there where you're like, I have no idea what he's going to do. I said it last time on the pod, but anytime that ball is in the air, it scares the shit out of me.
On
If
any
it's
cross, any cross.
Yeah, it just the indecision at times becomes a little terrifying. I know that we got Gabriel Slonina back from the MLS, which is really cool. I would love to see him play maybe in a game or two, depending on how the rest of the year goes. I think for me, it's, pedal down for the rest of the year and just kind of try to ride these new transfers and guys that we have and see what it comes out to. But say things continue to kind of be shit for another 10 games, I think there's no reason why you don't give them a game, 2 games, 3 games, just to kind of see what you're getting out of them.
Yeah.
I think,
I was just gonna say, I think we're kind of on the same, or we are on the same page with that. Is I prefer Mendy over Kepa 100% because, like you said
yeah,
before, what's the main goal of a goalie is to stop shots, and I think he's one of the best at doing that. And he also was a Champions League winner goalkeeper, so that was kind
yeah,
of my argument to be. But he does also bring up a good point of recent with Mendy and goal. Anytime the ball is at his foot, I am scared. So just as
yeah,
I'm scared with a cross coming into Kepa. Anytime the ball is played back to Mendy, I was scared. So like in the long term, I don't know if like like, are we going to just be scared every time the ball is played back to Mendy, or like, do we need to get something else? I don't know. This one is a hard one for me because I truly think we should probably go out over the summer transfer and get a goalie, which is crazy after what we just did. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's another position I think we may need a new spot.
For me, it's not to the point where I feel like we need to go and buy somebody. I think with the amount of that we've spent, I think I'm pretty chilling just not doing
I
anything
know. I was
for
just
a little bit
shit.
until financial fair play says we're chilling.
Yeah,
Like that's it. That's a big
absolutely.
thing for me is
Yeah,
like, man, I think with Slonina coming back to Chelsea, it'd be really interesting to see what he has to offer.
yeah,
Because say you go and buy another goalkeeper, and the way that we do contracts, he's in there for the next 7 fucking years. Then what happens whenever we need, say we need another a guy to fill in for his space, and we already sold off Slonina or whatever it might be. I think realistically, like Kepa, although he scares me, has been good, like really good at times, and I think Mendy's been really good at times. I think that Mendy's had an off year with a couple injuries, and I don't know what they're going to do. I think they could. I think we could for sure see one of them leave this year during the summer again, just to make dollar amounts back. And I think realistically, when you look at the two bodies of work that these guys have offered, I think Kepa is the guy that leaves. I think just with it's almost every other game is a clean sheet for him. I think that's definitely something to be said. And I think again, it comes down to Bully and his team and what he feels he's willing to offer to get rid of, at least for me.
yeah. No, I agree. And as we wrap this up, I do want to say for me, and I don't know about you, Jake, and the Mecca of Banter podcast, the one that we just recently recorded, one of our Butchie's factor cap at the end of it was, do we think Graham Potter is going to get sacked at the end of the year? And my answer was no, but obviously with Chelsea, who knows with that? But one thing I did want to say is I think after this transfer, now that he has a set team, I think now, and Henry has been on my case for this because he thinks it should have been months ago. I think now we can start criticizing Potter. Like, I want to start
Yeah.
seeing an identity. I want to start seeing us playing better football, not boring football, because clearly whatever we're doing, he needs to change something. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that we start to see some change in him impact and put imprints on this side. Because if we don't, if he doesn't, and we continue to see boring games, like we need results. We're in ninth place. Like we need to get results at the same time. And I do agree with Henry. Like we do need to be critical of him. So I think these
Yeah.
next couple of games are huge for us.
Yeah, and I think for me, I was very critical of him from the start. I think he did a great job with his side the last couple years, but you're bringing in a guy who, for me, seems soft.
Yeah.
You know, you have a guy that like Tommy Tuchel, who's very, very opinionated, is willing to speak out at times, from what I've heard to his players, like very, very verbally and tell them exactly what he needs for them. And for me, Graham Potter's kind of like the guy that sits behind the scenes and tries to be tactical and not tell. He sends lineups out, and you don't know exactly what he wants from you. I think that was the thing that I really enjoyed about Tuchel is that I mean, even in the media, he would tell you what he wants from certain guys.
Absolutely.
And I think if Potter can lean into doing something similar to that, the best part is that potentially you can play basically a whole new 11. Like
Yeah.
realistically, say you want to. And I think realistically, again, we were talking about all the, yeah, yeah. And you talk about all these young guys and impressionable minds and all that, especially with the age that a lot of these guys are, you can teach them the way that, say, for some of them, the Premier League plays or big time pro football plays. Like, I think that's the way that you can really get to these guys of being able to say, hey, this is what we're going to do and really shake things up. And I think a lot of that bring in these newer, more creative players will allow you to do. I think it's hopefully going to be pretty football, moving forward. But it's hard to say right now. I personally, just because of our history, I don't think he stays.
Wow.
Personally, um,
Wow. Do you
do I think it's different now that it's a new owner? Absolutely. I think it really depends on what their relationship is. Obviously, it's hard to tell that because there's no real literature on what that looks like. But after what they've done over the January transfer, it seems much more like a combined process of being able to pick out what you want and what you need,
I agree. I
rather
feel
than
like the
just
summer one.
going,
Yeah.
yeah, not going and signing fucking Sterling and a Boomerang. You know what I mean? I think it's a very different look, and I'm hoping that they're because I don't mind the guy, I don't dislike him. I think for what he's been dealt over injuries and some of this other stuff, I'd really like to see him play with a healthy squad
Yeah.
for a little while.
I agree. And I think you did bring up a really good point, and I agree with you 100% on was the whole Tuchel speaking his mind and Potter kind of sitting back. And Doe's brought up a good point is the egos. Like I feel like
Yeah.
Brighton there wasn't as many egos, but now you're dealing with $100 million Enzo
Yeah.
Fernandez, $90 million Mudryk, like $60 million Cucurella. Like these are that's a lot of
Thiago
money.
Silva, who's won it
Yes.
all, and guys
Yes.
that have been Champions League winners, and he hasn't been there, and all
Yes.
that
So
stuff.
I'm hoping that he and once again like this is just me assuming, so don't come at me everyone like geez. But I'm thinking he was kind of taking a step back and trying to see the hand that he was dealt, and now I'm hoping he makes his plays. And if he doesn't, then I
Right.
agree with you. Like he needs to go. Like we can't just continue to like feel it out and wait for something to happen. Like we have signings now. We have a couple of trainings under our belt with a lot of these guys now. So like let's see some performances.
My vote, if you see Kai and Mount play next game, he's out in my book.
You think he's sacked immediately?
No, I don't think he's out immediately. I think that's kind of your defining factor, just as like a guy that's watch them be so good and then be able to play with no fucking leash.
Yeah.
Like there's no yanking of the leash. There's
Yeah.
no anything saying like, "Hey, you need to come back down to
You haven't
earth."
been
Like you
slapped on the
guys
wrist in a while.
no. And so I think for me that's a big step in the right direction is you give, your two guys who might be I don't want to say like the face of the team, but like the two young guys that you thought for the last 3 years are going to move into world class players. And the way they're playing this year, they're far from it.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, yes, they lead the team in points, but that's also because they played more games than anybody else.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. So I would love to see over the next, like literally next game, see those two not touch the field, or if they do, bring them on for 20 minutes, whatever. I think you can't start those two. You have all these offensive talents that are coming back. João Felix finally coming back. Like you have all these guys. Like I say, you just throw the fucking kitchen sink, play your what you think is like the most offensive team for a game, play the most defensive team for a game. I think you try to score goals. I think that's the biggest thing. And I'm sure Boley's telling the same thing is like you gotta score. Have to. Like it can't be another year where you just like win 1-0 games every game or draw at 0-0.
I
It just
hope
can't happen.
I hope you're right, Jake, but I also have this feeling that we are going to see Kai and Mount on that team sheet when it comes next week. But
I
hey,
hope not.
great episode, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on. We just kind of dove really deep into that Chelsea side. Hopefully, we're out of this boring football era. The last couple of games, shit, I say games, last couple of games, but it's been years, and I've
Yeah.
it's been good and it's been bad, but it's been the same style. So I'm hoping we can bring back that beautiful football. I appreciate you for coming on, Mr. Jake Wynd. Um,
Yeah.
as always, follow us on all of our social medias. This one is a Mecca of Banter, Mecca Moments. It's the first one. So leave a comment on what you guys think and if you guys enjoy these kind of deeper dives into specific topics that we go over. But yeah, cheers, Jake. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Cheers, buddy. Thank you for having me.
Of course.